Hello, my name is Nathaniel Vargas, and I will be talking about the legal battle over the rights of Superman between creators Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, and how his heirs have been fighting over the rights against the major corporation Warner Brothers since 1947. A true David versus Goliath standoff. So, Superman first appeared, as we kind of know him, in 1938. So, at that time, it sold for about 10 cents, which is equivalent to about $2 in 2020. It's widely considered to be the beginning of the superhero genre and one of the most valuable comic books in the world. After so many rejections, Shuster and Siegel would transform the comic industry forever, since they've been working on this character for years prior to that. You can actually find this original one on eBay for $3.5 million. It was the most expensive comic of all time until Spider-Man's debut comic beat it by 100,000, and that just happened recently. And that was like 3,600,000, which is just crazy to think about. You can see why the Shusters and Siegels wanted to have the rights over it, especially with all the new DC films concerning Superman. There's a lot of greenbacks at play here. Superman had been in radio serials, television shows, novels, live theatrical productions, all the merchandise involved, even theme parks and movies that are still being made today. So Detective Comics, or DC, only paid them $130 for the rights. If you can see, and it's hard to see, but in the top left corner of the check, it shows Superman and then 130, which is crazy to think about. They did this so just to see Superman printed, and especially when you think about how much Superman is worth now, it's in the billions. This is why in 1947, Siegel and Shuster tried to reclaim these rights. This war has been waged for decades as generations of the families have fought to reclaim the rights to the Man of Steel. So the language is pretty plain to see that DC Comics own the copyright of Superman. There's even that check for it for 130 bucks. Though Siegel and Shuster sought to void these agreements in 1947, this unfortunately proved unsuccessful. The plaintiffs transferred all of their rights to Detective Comics Incorporated, and I quote, was the sole and exclusive owner of and has the sole and exclusive right to the use of the title Superman and to the conception, idea, continuity, pictorial representation, and formula of the cartoon feature Superman as heretofore portrayed and published. So suffice to say, DC Comics owned it all. So obviously, Siegel and Shuster were pretty unhappy about this outcome and sought to take control over the Superman renewal rights in the mid-60s and early 70s. These efforts proved fruitless yet again. The court had determined that DC also owned the renewal rights. So in 1975, they would enter yet another agreement regarding the rights of Superman due to the PR campaign initially started by Jerry Siegel when Warner Brothers was announcing the production of a Superman film, which he definitely condemned. With the help of comic book artists like Neil Adams and Jerry Robinson, who supported him, and waged a PR campaign it was about the treatment of comic artists or creators in general. Siegel and Shuster acknowledged that all the rights and interests Superman resided exclusively to DC Comics, so even though the rights were owned by DC, they wanted to avoid this bad publicity. So Warner Brothers would give Siegel and Shuster yearly stipends of $20,000, and this would rise over the years. It also agreed to modest annual payments for the remainder of their lives, as well as provide them with medical insurance and officially credit them as the creators of Superman. So for the time being, the matter had been settled. So Congress changed the Copyright Law Act with the enactment of the Copyright Act of 1976. So Congress had extended this right to authors who had entered into agreements prior to January 1st, 1978. Given that the agreement they made with Warner Brothers was done in 1975, this gave another opportunity for the Siegel family and the Shuster family to reclaim the copyright. Now the heirs would be in the fight. In plain terms, the previous agreements between DC, Siegel, and Shuster became ineffective. This gave the families another chance at the copyright. So I wish it had been like the picture that I posted here, but it definitely didn't go down like that. So the Siegel family were trying to terminate the grant that Jerry Siegel made initially in 1975. So in 2008, this came to fruition when District Judge Stephen Larson, in a landmark case, determined that after 70 years, the Siegel heirs would regain the copyright in the Superman material that was published in that first Action Comics issue. The copyright that Judge Larson granted in 2008 was 50% of the copyright of the Superman material in Action Comics 1 and certain other stories, including his origin on the planet Krypton and all his special abilities and his outfit. This was a huge win in a case that had been going on for decades. As long as there were not any settlement agreements post 1978, they were in the clear. The Siegel family had found their kryptonite in winning against DC, or so it seemed. This had prompted heirs of Joseph Shuster to serve DC a copyright termination notice purporting to recapture certain early Superman works as of October 26, 2013. So on November 7, 2003, Perry, who was the substitute for the Shuster family estate, served DC as well. But DC would argue that in 1992 an agreement was made between them and Gene Shuster Peavy and Frank Shuster, which were Joseph's siblings. This barred them from exercising their termination rights, this prior agreement, since it was made after 1978. This 1992 agreement made DC pay off Shuster's debts and expenses, as well as increase survivor payments to his brother Frank, he would later in turn request that the payments be made to Jean. This would pay Jean $25,000 a year for the rest of her life, a stark contrast to the billions made by Warner Brothers. So because this agreement was made after the Copyright Act of 1976, these efforts proved fruitless and the Shuster rights remained with DC. So another one bites the dust. Despite the Siegel family efforts, their portion of the Superman copyright reverted back to DC Comics. This was because the Ninth Circuit would rule on the grounds that the parties did come to an agreement in 2001 via letter confirmed by Judge Stephen Larson himself, at the time saying that the letter did not constitute an agreement between the parties. The Ninth Circuit focused on this and showed that the letter, and I quote, plainly states that the Siegel heirs have accepted DC Comics' offer of October 16, 2001 in respect of the Superman properties. Following this were 5 pages of terms outlining compensation for the heirs in exchange for DC's continued right to produce Superman works. It even had the signature of the Siegel family's attorney. So, although DC lost this initially, all the rights that Judge Larson had won them back would reverse and be given back to DC. And then, so DC would continue to profit billions from the Superman name, of course, especially with the rise of films in recent years. And DC would avoid the right of termination because they entered in agreements post-1978 with both families of the Superman creators. Thanks to those agreements made after 1978, DC is now the sole holder of the Superman copyright. And although everything Superman appears in now includes the line, by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family, that's at least they give them that credit. So, I mean, obviously, corporations taking advantage of the little guy, the creators, has been going on for very long. And obviously, as much stipends and money as they got, it definitely has no comparison to the money that Warner Bros. Will continue to receive. So, it's pretty crazy to think about. It's almost akin to like Manhattan Island being sold for $24 in the past. At least that's how I think about it, because it's crazy. But I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on this, considering how much money was exploited from the artist's creation after the fact. I hope you enjoyed this.